And we have in this session two speakers, Dr. Nizar Al-Bash and Professor Jamal Belkhadir. Let me have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Nizar Al-Bash. As you know, Dr. Nizar Al-Bash is now the chairman of our region, the MENA region, and he is doing heroic, let me say. I'm probably the eldest person in the region, and I know the situation in the region, and I can evaluate what he is doing as in one word, he is doing heroic things during his chairmanship period, which is going to take 2 years. And in spite of, Dr. Al-Bash is Syrian, and he is suffering from all what you can imagine our Syrian brothers are suffering from. In spite of this, he is doing wonderful work in leading our region at this very, very difficult time. Dr. Nizar Bash, at the same time, he is going to give us a presentation on diabetes in the region, in the MENA region, the challenges and difficulties, and who to face them. He is facing them. Okay, Dr. Nizar.
It's okay. Yeah. First of all, let me thanks again Professor Inash Al-Tuta. But we have to say, a meeting like this doesn't succeed with only one person. I believe it's a work of a team, and I will thank all the team that behind this huge meeting. Again, thank you for Professor Mercy for this nice words. He mentioned I am Syrian. Yes, I am. Well, to summarize something, I have been working in Aleppo University Hospital for 28 years. I have to leave my country in 2012 through some countries, United States. I came back to France where I did my medical study. So if you feel some French accent coming from my bad English, it became from my background. So let's start. I will go very, I have my glasses, these are, yeah. You know, diabetes have been discovered in this country with very old papyrus Ibris in 1550 BC. And then that diabetes became and still a huge challenge for humanity. All civilizations, and during 3,500 years of evolution, contributed in some way to development of diabetes and to its treatment. But still, even today, with all what we have a lot of challenges. Some of them due to the nature of the disease. It's a chronic disease with very increasing prevalence, particularly in our region. There are many complications, as you are aware about. Also, because diabetes is the main cause of death for people under the age of 60, very costly to treat, and there are many risk factors. Some of them can be prevented behind this disease. And we said it's a chronic disease, and with all this progress, we are not able to prevent or even 100% completely prevent or to cure completely diabetes even today. For this reason, it's really a really challenge. Well, you know, 400 million people with diabetes, 300 with EGT, and we have about 300 million with undiagnosed diabetes. This is a number to remember only. But what we want to say, this we have today 1 of 11 people with diabetes worldwide. In 2014, 1 of 10. Each one birth will affected, which gestational diabetes was affected by diabetes. Coming to our region, we know that the prevalence is very high, and we have more than 35 million people with diabetes in our region. But look for the figures today. We have, I said, 35, and we expect to have 72 million people with diabetes. Even with this figure, we underestimate the number in our region. And we believe we have more than 25% of people with diabetes underestimated. If we do that, we'll have about 90 million people with diabetes in our region. This is published in new articles of Paul Zimmet and George Alberti 2 months ago. In developing country, we underestimate the prevalence of diabetes. Again, this figure, we have at least 5 countries on the top of highest prevalence of diabetes from MENA region, particularly from Gulf area. And this is alarming figure, of course. Diagnosed diabetes, we know about that. Complications are very common in our region. Look for that in our region. Very high chronic complications. Mortality rate is very high for diabetes, and it's true for our region also. We see that 50% of people above the age of 60 died from diabetes. This is the mortality of our region. Of course, it's higher with the age, and unfortunately, if we compare the mortality rate in our region, it's earlier. It's happened for younger people than Europe. People die with diabetes earlier in our region than in Europe or in the States. It is a very costly disease, of course. And if we look for the cost of diabetes, we see how it costs to treat diabetes and how we are spending money to treat diabetes. It increased, and we expect to be higher in 2014. We spend only 147 billion to treat diabetes in our region compared to other countries like the States, United States, 263, and so on. It's little for some countries, but in our region, it's 14 billion only for 147 for Europe. And that's also very variable from one country to another. It's dependent on many things. GDP, we look for instance, Qatar has the highest GDP in the region, and Yemen was the lowest one. So the healthcare expenditures is very variable and very low in our region, particularly in some countries, as we saw. This is another figure to see how much we spent to treat diabetes in our region. Look for in orange color, we see that military expenditure in blue to healthcare, and we see in some country they spend double or maybe triple more to deal with military weapons than healthcare. And if we look how many we spend to treat a person with diabetes in our region per year? We see for Norway it's more than 10,000, and unfortunately in our region, 676 in Pakistan, and in Syria it was 181. Now it's less, of course. The question why? Because we have many risk factors in our region. First of all, the sudden change of nutritional habits. We abandon our local nutrition, which was very healthy, our Mediterranean nutrition, to opt for another one, high calorie, high lipids, high fat in-food, Western style. Low physical activity also is very common in our region. Obesity became more common, and smoking also. Higher life expectancy also increased in our region, and with that, the prevalence of diabetes. And it's very common to have marriage among relatives, particularly when they have diabetes. This is our old the Mediterranean nutrition. And now we moved to this one. And sometimes we look like this. Unfortunately, with that, we will have more diabetes. Look for this consumption of lipids and fat in the region. Egypt, double, or even double, yes. For Saudi Arabia, it's 4 times higher consumption of fats. Low physical activity, we were like this a few decades ago. Look what we look today. We move more with this. And overweight become, and obesity more common, and even in some country, it reach more than 50% of population, adult population, like in Jordan. This is our attitude today, and we're not to be surprised to be diabetic the next day. Well, this is our life expectancy in the region, and we see we are very far in this ranking countries. Egypt, 100 point, and with Syria we become with 144. Very, very low. So how we can face all that and try to slow down? I didn't say stop. We'll try to stop this epidemic, but at least try to do something. Well, for that, we have our MENA region with 26 active member associations, 22 countries, and we have our regional plan to try to be with the IDF mission and to try to facilitate access to health care, to prevent diabetes, and to take care of people with diabetes in our region. So one of our first priority in the region, dealing what has happened in our region. We have now in our region 7 areas where there is civil war or conflicts. You know, one of the worst one is in Syria, and there is, of course, Darfur, Yemen, Somalia, so on, Iraq, and Afghanistan. So we are going to work with that. We have started to do with that, and we have a specific speech about that tomorrow. But I would say it's a priority. There is a lot of people suffering, and I said our former president Michael Harris told you he was been in Lebanon yesterday, and he has been witnessing of something happening there. So I will speak more on details about that problem of time. But besides that, we have still a huge mission, huge job to do, to try to increase awareness and work on prevention. We speak a lot of time. What we are looking to do is to do a practical steps on our regional plan. And for that, we are planning every time to have roundtable discussion, workshop, and practical workshop education for people with diabetes. So for that, tomorrow you have a special session for MENA region on two hot topics, refugees and national diabetes program. Also, we're trying to increase awareness all the year, particularly in World Diabetes Day, November 14. But we are looking to do that every day. It is our job, it's our mission. Advocacy, it should be a part of our daily life. Not me alone, you too, if you want to take care about diabetes. Education start from small discussion to your clinic, to your hospital, to everywhere. You can do that, even with very low resources. It's not impossible to start your own education. I have myself started education in Syria 15 years ago, and it was the beginning. Now we have on our national diabetes education program. I'm proud to say that you start with very small things, and you get at a few days later something very practical. So screening high-risk people for diabetes, and it is very useful. Try to do that everywhere, and you will get really people who wasn't diagnosed with diabetes. Start with small meeting everywhere, and you will get very positive results. Now also, we are working with our guidelines. When I speak about guidelines, you will imagine we will do the same, taking ADA, AASD guidelines and say, okay, you have to stick with these guidelines. No, we are trying to develop more and more our local guidelines, focusing in our local needs like Hajj and Ramadan and so on. And we have now DAR, this is a group diabetes and Ramadan, and we got a new lines for MENA region for Ramadan, for instance. And what is very important, diabetes and diabetic foot very important, and we are working on workshop on that, prevention for diabetic foot, workshop and diabetes center for diabetic foot is very important. Trying to work with WHO, it's also a very important target for us. It's not easy because we are NGOs and WHO working mainly with government, so sometimes the connection not easy as we so. And what is the most important, and as you saw with our colleague Shahinaz told you, in Europe there are about 15 countries without national diabetes program. In our region, there is more than half of countries without national diabetes program. Preparing, implementing national diabetes program is very important target, and we are working on that. Of course, there is a lot of things to do, but prevention still the main objective of our plan, and we are trying to do what is feasible in our region, try to find the best way to start our prevention program according to our local needs. It's a long-term policy. We are aware about that, but we have to work on that. If we don't try today to work on prevention, the curve is going like this in red. Fight against obesity, sedentary, fast food, smoking, and stress of daily life is the way that we can take to prevent, at least to slow down the evolution of this epidemic called diabetes. And thank you very much for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a very great pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Professor Jamal Belkadir from the Kingdom of Morocco. Jamal is somebody who has given exemplary service to the cause of diabetes, both in his own country, throughout the MENA region, and in the International Diabetes Federation. I had the privilege to be in Morocco earlier this year and to be present at a conference in which Jamal and Smidian, the National Association, were playing a very active part. And I was hugely encouraged to see that good collaboration between government and the diabetes carers, clinicians, and the representatives of civil society. And I think that both of us, and probably also all the people here from Morocco, are encouraged that following last Friday's general election in that country, there is a possibility that the next Minister of Health is somebody that we know well and who would be absolutely outstanding in that role. So, as we say in English, Jamal, my fingers are firmly crossed. And it's a real pleasure to invite you to talk about the exciting things that are happening in your country in diabetes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear Sir Michael. Thank you for my friend, Professor Ines Shaltut, and all organizing committee for the invitation. And it's a great pleasure for me to be with you in beautiful country, Egypt. I am going to talk about the Moroccan experience, specifically Moroccan experience, and as my colleagues have spoken, big problem of diabetes in our region, and in Morocco is more than 1.8 million. It's probably near 10%, and lot of expenditure, and it costs very high in our region and in Morocco. What some data of epidemiology in Morocco? 99 in adult, not big difference between man and woman. And we have 625,000 diabetic are managed in public basic medical center. 63% live in urban area, and more than 280,000 are treated by insulin. Some characteristic of diabetic type 2 in Morocco, they are not big difference, but probably obesity is not very important in Morocco, but it's growing, and HbA1c is not very, very good. And in 2012, only 45% of diabetic have medical insurance. The quality of follow-up in type 2 diabetes is education. More than 52% of patients have received education. HbA1c lower than 7 point, only third patient achieve this objective. And if we want to know about 4 criteria, HbA1c, good criteria, HbA1c, systolic pressure, blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, and LDL cholesterol, only lower than 1% achieve this A. Expenditure in Morocco are from public insurance in 2014, 55 are used by medication and 14 by hospitalization. And when we want to know about distribution of the main 4 NCDs, we find diabetes, and only 30.8 are reserved to the prevention. That's very low. As my colleague speak just a few minutes, socioeconomic cultural change with behavioral risk factor lead to metabolic change, and that's why we have big problem with obesity, diabetes mellitus, hypertension, and dyslipidemia in our region and in Morocco. The context in Morocco, we have epidemiologic transition. We have demographic transition. Now, more than persons are old than 20 years ago. And we have nutritional transition with urbanization, with the new type of food, with a lot of sugar, a lot of salt, and a lot of fat. That's why its new approach is necessary, and it focuses not only on the disease, but on the patient. The Moroccan experience now is that the observation in Morocco, we have general consensus. It's important. It's probably the first time in Morocco we have, as Sir Michael said, collaboration between different partnerships. Diabetes is public health problem, that's true, and health professionals are not only concerned. They are important, they are not only, must all participate, because it's important to have national awareness, important to comprehensive care as well as therapeutic preventive. We have many opportunities now in Morocco. We have strong political support. We have, you know that in November, next November, we have big meeting in Marrakesh about health environment. It's important for us. Development of public and private medical sectors in Morocco. Multidisciplinary partnership, specifically public and private partnership supported by law. Involvement of religion official, ulama. Strong involvement of the media, and strong involvement of national, non-governmental organization. The first one important is the new constitution in 2011. In the Article 31 on the constitution, what's specify the right of all people, and naturally for diabetic, health care, social protection, medical coverage.